We'd like to welcome everybody. Thanks for being here with us tonight. This meeting is a regular called meeting, and the notice of time and place and the agenda of the meeting have been provided to the local news media, to each member of the governing body, and was posted on the city webpage and the state public meetings webpage. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Councilman Labron? Here. Councilman White? Here. Councilman Barrett? Here. Councilman Waite? Here. And Councilman Burdick? Here. Great. To get started, we've asked Councilman Waite to give us an opening prayer, and then if everyone would stand and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Holy Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to gather in this setting of the City Council. We're grateful for wonderful citizens of Roosevelt and the surrounding area, for the good things they engage in, and for the way they help their neighbors and try to do what's best for the community. Father, we pray for our great nation and for the challenges that it faces at this time. We ask that thy Spirit can lead and guide the leaders of our nation, our state, and our community, and the world, that we can live peacefully and be mindful of one another. We ask that thou will guide and direct us in our efforts this night as we look at the matters of the city and how they relate to us locally, that we can make decisions that will affect us in a positive manner. We are grateful for those who put forth so much effort in the city, our employees, and the work that they do to see that the city runs smoothly and functions properly. We ask a blessing upon our police force and firefighters and those who work to protect us and help us in difficult and challenging situations. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilman Waite. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the previous meeting? And if so, are there any changes or amendments to that, to the minutes? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion by Councilman Waite,
I'll second that.
second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Unanimous. As is customary with our meetings now, we have, at the beginning of each meeting, we have an opportunity for the public to speak. We have set aside some time. We ask that if you do choose to speak, that you come to the front of the pulpit and state your name and address, and we'll give you up to 3 minutes. Wondering, is there anyone here that would like to take advantage of that tonight? Are you sure? Brady, come on. All right. If not, looks like we have some scouts with us tonight. Welcome. What troop are you with?
254.
254. So with the scouts that come in, we have a little gift for you if you'd like to come forward. And if you'd like to give us your name really loud so everybody can hear. Or you can come up here. Yeah. And tell me your name. Isaac Baker. Here's a little gift for you, Isaac.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. And you are?
Stetson Black.
Stetson Black. Who's your dad?
Douglas Black.
Okay. I know Black, but not Douglas. Welcome.
Roosevelt, 5th Ward, Mud Flats.
Great. Thanks for being here. It's good to have you here tonight. Ryan Smith. Is Ryan Smith here tonight?
I think we do have
some that would be
Sure.
interested in that conversation.
So, just for those of you that are here that may not know, Ryan Smith is somebody that has approached the city to implement a recycling program within the city. I think this is the second time he's been on the agenda. You've spoken with
I
him.
have spoken with him, and his desire is to have a few different things. One, as I understand, he would like to create a recycling that would allow people to do it voluntarily. Or his preference would be to have the city have a contract with him and bill like we do with K&K. We have reviewed our contract, and I have invited or visited with K&K, and from staff perspective as well as theirs, we believe that contracting is something that would conflict with our current contract with them, and so the staff would recommend that not be the case. But he's looking to do it. The other option would be independent, either door-to-door solicitation or through a Facebook means. He indicated to me that he had visited with ones in Vernal and was proceeding in Vernal. So at this point, I don't know that I could speak much for him. Obviously, recycling is a great thing, but at that point, he's not here to speak for himself. So
Sure.
I guess he's really interested in feedback packaging.
This is twice. Yeah. So my personal feeling on that is very similar. I feel like if he wants to do something and approach homes and offer them a service, and it's between him and the homeowner, I feel like that's appropriate for him to do. However, charging residents for a recycling program when we already have, does anyone else have any thoughts?
I'd speak to that, Mayor. I guess I'm pretty biased to our folks that handle our trash right now. They've done a fantastic job for the city. And I think at the end of the day, the trash probably ends up in their hands anyway. So myself, I just don't have appetite to move on it. I don't know that we have a huge demand locally for that. I think recycling's great. I'm all for the environment, but we're not in an area that can sustain, in my opinion, those types of large-scale efforts. So myself, it's a mute issue. I'd just like us to move past it and go on. It's just me.
Mayor, it seems we have a few from K&K here tonight, and it's great to see, but back when I was on the city council before and renewing at one time, it seemed like you had responded and talked about that once, that you looked into it somewhat. Can you say who wants to speak?
We volunteered David to be the spokesman.
Okay, great.
You see me raise my hand?
Well, I guess you were the last one.
In response to that, that is correct. I visited with a gentleman by the name of Martin Spencer. He's from here. He sells solid waste equipment, recycling equipment out in the city. And I called and visited with him yesterday, and he said, Dave, he says, stay clear away from it. He said, I'm not saying that recycling is not a good thing. He said, because there are places and things that can be recycled. He said, but the ultimate thing being, he said, if, for an area like this, he said, you're so far away from any major hub as far as recycling goes. And he used cardboard, for example. He said, and I didn't learn this till this morning, pizza box, for example. You'd think, good cardboard. But if it has any stain or oil or cheese or leftover crust in it, it's no good to the recycler. And so, suppose you compile a load of cardboard that you think is going to be recycled. You spend all the time putting it together, haul it out to the recycler, and they look at it, and if there's one thing that they don't want in it, they reject the load. And so you've got all the expense into it, then you got to turn around and bring it back home and pay a landfill fee. And so not saying that there's not things, there's a lot of metal and a lot of metal that goes out of here as far as recyclables. I'm not familiar with the plastic and stuff. He made comment that he recently attended a city council meeting up in North Ogden where they was interested in implementing the same thing. And he said that one city councilwoman said, well, I recycle. And he said, I wasn't trying to be facetious or anything. He said, well, I said, ma'am, what do you recycle? So I take my newspaper. And he said, where do you take it? And she says, well, down to the Smiths or parking lot and put it in the dumpster there. She says, so I recycle. And he said, ma'am, he said, have you followed the truck that picks that newspaper up? And she said, no. And he said, I assure you, he said, 9 of the 10 times that truck's picked that up, it's headed right to the dump. And that he said there's not much that actually does get recycled. There are some. He said, I'm not gonna, but he said the biggest thing that you need to know, he said, is if you're gonna do it, it's not gonna be something that you're gonna get paid for. It's gonna cost you to do it. And so if you, kind of what he told me was, he said, if you get, there's some of these special interest groups that come in and say, well, we'll give you, if you charge X amount of dollars, we'll give you so much back and so forth. He said it rarely happens. And but anyway.
You are doing some recycling for tires, aren't you?
We take care of tires and metal both.
And metal both?
Yes.
And you have the bulk containers for each one and you
do. Yes.
pick those up?
Does your metal include like aluminum and
Yes.
different things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't separate it or anything. We've been hauling it directly to Salt Lake. One of the Vernal guys recently has made a comparable offer to us, and so we've been working with him and that. And so, but we are participating in some of those programs. Yes.
Great.
Any other questions?
I agree with Aaron.
So I got a question. If it's not a profitable industry, if there's somebody that's willing to come and invest in that industry and spend their own money and time trying to set something up that's not necessarily with the city as far as putting dumpsters and things out, but if they were to put like a central location to bring some of their trash, even though it's not profitable for him, if he feels like it's profitable and would like to do that, what kind of issue would you have with that? Just curious.
The biggest thing I see, help me out if I step in the wrong direction here, the biggest thing I see with it is if someone's going to come and do that, in my mind, we have an agreement with 4 or 5 pages long with the do's and the don'ts of what we should do and what we can't do and when we can do it and so forth and so on, and the type of equipment that's used. In my mind, if this individual is serious about it and stuff, that some of those same standards need to be applied to him. As far as hauling cardboard around in the back of a pickup, I don't know if that's a real great recycling program.
Or even sending something out to the street on a windy day like today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually visited with one of the Vernal haulers this morning, and he made comment that apparently a similar thing has come up over there. They are like us. They've instructed their drivers that anytime if something doesn't make it in the truck, you get out, pick it up, and make sure it gets cleaned up. Well, apparently this driver was going along and dumped the can and didn't notice the bags prior to dumping the can, but noticed the bags as the can was coming back down. So the driver got out, threw the bags in, and 10 minutes later his office gets a call saying, why did you throw those bags away? Those are for the recycler. So it kind of gets into a...
Well, and I think the biggest thing is like what's already been said. I mean, K&K takes care of the garbage. If somebody wants to come in and get a business license and try to drum up a little business and they're held to the same standards and they think it's profitable, there's not much that we can do, but I don't think we endorse or set it up to where we would bill. I don't.
Yeah, I think we should honor your contract. If you guys don't want it to happen, then that's what we should do.
There's a couple
So.
things in that contract that we ought to point out. One of them is there's things in the contract says we don't need to pick up batteries, paint, cars, fence posts, dirt, and these kind of things, even though we do get that kind of stuff. But it also says in that same phrase, everything goes to Duchesne County landfill.
Mhm. And that's a county, that's imposed by the county also.
Yes. You see, and I think
So-
what happened on this, the last time I was in here for, contract
Mhm.
renew and what have you, I think that phrase went in there
Mhm.
because there's a fellow from Vernal that was applying. And the group then didn't want to see their trash hauled back, or our trash
Well-
hauled back to Vernal.
Well, and it goes even further than that. I think they've expanded the Blue Bench, and the county spent quite a bit of money in that. And for them to be able to recoup that money,
They've got to.
we ran into that with certain projects. So, but everything that's generated in Duchesne County has to go to Duchesne County landfill.
They've got quite an operation over there. They have spent gajillions of dollars, I think, in liners, equipment to take care of it. And I don't think they want to see those items just sitting idle, but the trash going somewhere else. Different subject for a half a minute. I've got the floor. I see it right there. Thanks for letting us be of service to you the next 2 Saturdays and next week. That has been, I think, a good thing. And last year we worked with the Uena County Commission, Roosevelt, Duchesne County Commission, trying to get this all up on the same time so that western Uena County, eastern Duchesne County, everybody can come and take care of this. And the girls have got boom, 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 boom. So we're,
I forgot about it, so I'm going to be in shortly.
so we're
How
all,
about that 21st, because I don't work till the 28th.
but
Just know I'm going to
anyway,
bring the fun stuff.
just want to tell you thank you. We
Yes,
appreciate
absolutely.
being a service.
Thank you
That's
for.
what we're, hopefully that was one of the big reasons we built what we built. That it could be a service to the community.
It has been a great one. Thank
So-
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for trusting us to take care of that. More, by the way, I don't work cattle, do I? I'm a Cub Scout, do I get an eye for that?
You didn't give me your address.
You didn't tell what troop it was from.
That's right. But we do have one other that just came in.
252.
255, right?
You got one.
Yeah, you want to,
Ethan.
Ethan, what's your last name?
Rachel.
Crapo. Welcome, Ethan. That's a little flashlight for you, so when you go on a camp out. I don't know how good it works.
Do you have anything that we can improve on? You've heard, any complaints or anything like that?
You know, I personally haven't. Maybe that's something that,
Some of it is quiet, but we pass on any complaints we get,
yeah.
and we're happy to pass those along. And I think if we've had them, you've heard about them.
I'd
If
make
you haven't heard any,
just a personal one with our new store, the Dollar Green, that they need a bigger container because we sure get a lot of it coming our direction. That would, and it, I don't know, I talked to Ryan just a little bit once about, we don't have ordinances for sizes or putting containers in fences, which I know is a pain for you, but it's a big deal when we're having all these winds and everything's going, so.
don't they have, if they watch it and they put their lids down, that should take care of that. Maybe,
But theirs is so packed all the time, the lids are, it's really a,
We had someone that actually contacted us about that, that she was concerned about it, and so I called the manager over there and spoke with him and
good.
let him know that we were concerned about it, especially since it was so windy, so hopefully they will. He said that it's not generally that bad, mostly on the days that they get their stuff, so I don't know what days those are, but he said that he would make an effort to.
I think they have made a better effort. they pile it outside the container a lot more than just throwing it. But it's just a nuisance, those things, but I know that's not your concern, but that's something,
I
as
think
we're
a lot
growing
of
and more
those-
things, we need to have better
Those
control.
businesses that, like our Family Dollar, they're actually built through waste management who pay you guys and us. They don't realize what we offer, cause I've been on the phone with Family Dollar down by Stewart's every day for the past 6 days, trying to figure out what we can do to provide for them. They had no idea that we could dump that dumpster 6 days a week. They had no idea, they just thought this is what they were stuck to. And so I think maybe the word, I don't know how to get word out to some of these businesses that more service is available, but that's something that we'd be willing to do.
Maybe with our city beautification, that's something that you could tackle and just at least make mention when we do have an issue like that they could contact K&K and make them aware of those things. I think that'd probably solve our issue just as quick as anything.
A week ago, we sent Don Fitzgerald, he works for us part-time up there. And we sent him just knocking on doors, business-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And he come back with a little more service here and a picture this, just by making that contact. So we felt like that was a good thing, and we're gonna continue to send him around to,
Great.
Yeah.
like, sell, just see what we could do to improve.
It's wonderful.
That'd be good.
Also with the, as far as the enclosures go, and we kind of visited with Ryan from time to time, but, we have a facility over here at Dr. Thomason's new dentist office, that
We don't fit.
we can't fit in. So the dumpster is sitting outside.
We've been on a diet and everything.
Just can't move it.
But the truck simply does not fit inside the enclosure.
Well, and that may be something we need to look at as we're planning through planning and zoning and look at the size of trucks that you have and then go in and look at the size of area they would need for you to fit into and make sure that that's incorporated with their building.
And there are some wonderful structures out there. Some of them that are super nice. We still have had issues with
Could-
the dumpster is over full, the lid is folded back. The lid then causes the problem with the back wall in the structure. But if we could come to some sort of, it's gotta
You
be.
can get us a size.
Yeah,
You
if
can
you
get it
could-
with the building permit office and make sure that at least when they review the plans and start with the building inspector, as the plan comes in, it can be inspected and say, needs to fit this, and then it can go. So, that would be our first one to make sure he's aware, and we probably just need to visit with him again. But if he decides that it needs to be, I'm more than happy to visit with him.
We prefer it to be like 100. It doesn't matter. At some point in time, it's still gonna get, something's gonna happen. It just, we've got a few structures, like say, we're dealing with right now, down to Arby's and a few others that just, at the end of the day, they're just not big enough. And, in fact, even, Councilman Abrams' facility, the dumpster wasn't there for no more than a month or two, I don't think, and his brother came to us and said, get these lids off of here because they're damaging our building. And, so it's kind of a battle that is unforeseen by a lot of people, if that makes any sense.
It's the truth, that wasn't the highest profile thing. Plus, we enlarged our container really quickly too.
Yeah.
And
Well,
got it so it's picked up every day. So,
You stopped down to New Burger King and talked to Paul. Said, before you build that, we wanna talk to you.
Yeah, I think that's just something we need to add on to building application.
That's a good idea, thank you.
If you give me the size, you'll give me the size, then we can work from there.
We'll get with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your input. And thank you for all you do for our city.
You're welcome.
you.
Let's go to the 2018 revised budget presentation and approval. John, do you have some numbers for us?
One thing is he's coming up, just so you're aware, the process of this is to, we're going to a revised budget. It's government required to take our budget and at the end of the year, true that back up to actual. So the revised budget is government mandated to do. And then both of these have to go to a public hearing. So tonight, it is about taking you to a public hearing, not voting on approving them, but taking you to a public hearing. And John will go over them. I'll give you a lead in.
Do you have a chance?
All right,
Pull it up here.
Okay, so Ryan Snow's the city manager, but also the budget officer. He's asked me to go through this. I've tried to make a brief summary of both the reopen and the 2019 preliminary budget, just to express the key points of each. That way you can at least see the key points. So first off, this morning when we went over it with the department heads, I asked them, is there a way that I can make it more exciting and more, not to bore people to death.
I'm going to sing it.
They requested I sing it, but I'm sorry, I can't do that, so.
You could, you're just not willing to.
You're right. I'm willing. So, okay, the 2018 fiscal year reopened budget increase. Just to touch on a few things. For the general fund, when we initially put the budget together, we try to be pretty conservative. That way the expenses that are fit within that budget are also in the safe zone as well. And actually sales tax is trending in a way that's coming a little higher. So as you can see on page 1,
Back to page 1.
yeah, that one. You can see that the trend line of the sales tax is gradually increasing. So due to that, that leads into not only the sales tax increases for this budget reopen, but also the 2019 fiscal year. We also anticipate all of the other taxes to increase by about $260,000 more than anticipated. Some of the other pieces of the expenses on the general fund, increased transfer to the capital projects fund by around $750,000. Total expenses, including transfer to debt service and capital projects, increased by $724,000, and total expenses excluding the transfer to debt service and capital projects decreased by $26,000. So the bulk of the change that happens in the reopen is really a transfer into the capital projects. The majority of other reopen changes in budget expenses is simply a reallocation based on the needs for the year. No changes in the general fund debt service and the reopen. General fund capital projects, crossover chip seal project from 2017 fiscal year and wider scope of project increased by around $926,000. The net position of the capital projects fund in 2017 was $944,377. Additional sidewalk.
Sorry, John. Is that an increase, a net increase of $926,000
Yes.
to that one project?
Yes.
The chip seal project.
Yeah.
So the chip seal didn't get started until after the year. A lot of that was budgeted in the prior year, and so when we approved the prior year, it was approved to do the project, but because the project didn't start until
We had the
Still
money,
after the-
but it pushed into this year.
right. And so at that point, we had it budgeted last year, didn't get spent last year,
Gotcha.
and the project got started, but it got started after July 1st. And we had our budget approved, both the reopening of the previous one and this year's budget before July 1st, and they didn't start until.
That makes sense. That's just a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but it's going from one year to the other, so,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Good
Perfect.
question.
Thank
Good question. Additional sidewalk projects increased by about 45. It depends on the opportunities that come. Some grants come up and great opportunity, we pursue based on the approval of council, so. Majority of airport runway project will be in next fiscal year, so we're decreasing that by 70,000. A police vehicle replacement increased by 35. Fireworks equipment increased by almost 13, but that's all offset by a donations.
I hate to, so sorry. And that's a net increase of 35, and that's after we sold, is that part of us selling off
The
the?
purchase went into one bucket, the sales went into another,
Okay, so
because they
they're-
came out of different funds.
Okay.
This is going up in the general fund, but it's sold out of the water and sewer funds. So
Right.
it sold out of different funds than it came in, so we had to balance those.
And when we sold
So the revenue
those,
matched
they
what
come,
we had.
okay,
So we had, the first one was 30, and the second one was, well, the first one was like 2,600 after we sold. A net purchase cost was like $2,600, and the next one was 25 or 30, somewhere in there.
Well, like Ryan
Anyway.
said, some of the gains
Okay.
are recorded in other
In
funds
other funds.
because of the way it worked out.
where they, vehicles are coming
Where
from.
they came
Exactly,
from.
exactly.
Okay, just,
So, not any other questions up to that?
I won't ask anymore.
No, you're good. You're good. All right, so cemetery building plans postponed, decreased by 94,500. So all this is represented, and a little bit farther back in the presentation, but we'll get there too, so. Water fund, reopened. We're increasing the grants received portion due to the CDBG project grant and also the state UDOT project increased by 1.92 mil. Also, on the expense side, due to the timing of projects closing, I know sometimes we'll start a project and not sure exactly when it's gonna close out. And so when we do close it out, sometimes that messes with the depreciation expenses a little bit. So we're increasing that by 23,600. Additional Victory water usage expected, increased by 55,000. This, in the proposed budget for this coming year, we're actually just putting it as the max of 430,000 instead of trying to estimate how much Victory we're gonna use, just to say, well, let's just plan on using the 430,000 and then go from there. If it's less, great, unless council deems it different. Also additional added for 12 alley meters, 12 gateways, 2 well probes, PRV upgrades, and server upgrade increased by about 25,600. Additional added for secondary system maintenance increased by 5,500. Some of that's to do with Conservancy District. We get a bill from them for O&M costs. That came up a little bit this last year. As far as the water capital projects, that's on a different page, so we'll get to that. Sewer fund, wastewater revenue from Crescent Point wastewater cells. We're moving that up by 416,000 due to the wastewater cells over there. Grants from CIB and DEQ for South Cove sewer project. We're bringing that up to by an increase of 3.246 mil. Now that we know for sure, we've been awarded the grants and the money's here. We can, yeah, exactly. As far as expenses, sewer farm utility expenses increased by 7,500. Electricity is increased a little bit there. Kettle Farms wastewater expense increased by 10,000, but that's offset by a payment from Crescent Point. Some increase because of allocated IT support. We always try to make sure that anytime we get an expense, we allocate it across the funds instead of putting it into one fund, to try to make sure that we're being fair to all funds and allocating it appropriately. The majority, as mentioned before, of reopen changes are a reallocation based on the needs of the year. Sanitation fund, any adjustments are reflective of the K&K sanitation agreement we have with them. Any questions up to that point with 2018 reopen? Like I said, I tried to pick the points that are critical from the detail and try to summarize them all in one place.
before we go into the budget, we want to have a motion to have a public hearing on the
So, yeah, is everybody okay with approving this for a public hearing? And that'll be in June.
Usually, first one in June, last one in May, first one in June. That's what it is.
May 1st.
It's first council in June.
First council in June.
Do you need a motion to open it?
We need a motion to put it on the
I'll
agenda
make that
and
motion.
to have a public hearing. We have a motion by Councilman Labrum,
I'll second it.
second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thanks, John.
Okay.
Next,
Carry on.
carry on.
Okay, back on page 4. So this is the 2019 fiscal year preliminary budget. Spent actually a number of hours on this, quite a few hours on it. Trying to anticipate different trends, seeing what type of expenses we've had in the last part of the year, the previous year, and trying to take all that into account in setting up some of these assumptions. And as Ryan's mentioned, this is more of an initial introduction to a preliminary to see if the council's okay with proceeding on this basis. So some of the assumptions that we're going with or that we've built into the model thus far is that we expect most revenues and applicable funds to increase by 2.5%. Most expenses increase by about 1.5%. We expect health insurance costs to increase by around 20%. We're still getting a feel there. We still have to meet to try to figure out exactly where that comes out to be. But just to be in the safe zone, last year they were expecting a larger increase. But United Healthcare gave us a pretty good rate increase, really.
Really, the last 2 years, we've been very fortunate to have
Right.
a 5 to 7%, which is unlikely to continue, where costs have continued to grow. So we are saying 20% is likely.
And if I remember right, in our meeting with them, it seemed like they were saying, well, you might get a smaller decrease this year, but it's likely to hit you this year. So we're trying to plan for
We've been
at least
fortunate
that
for
type
2
of
years, so we
scenario.
don't figure we'll be fortunate forever. Maybe this will be another good year and great. We haven't finalized that with them, but by the time we come back for the final budget, we'll have worked that number out. This is preliminary where we're at.
Kind of reflective cost of that, John, just give context, is that 50, 60, 70, 100,000?
Oh, as far as
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the mass, at 20%, what does that equate to roughly?
I know the bill is what, around 30,000 a month times 12.
So we're talking about $70,000 possibly.
Yeah, it's pretty
72.
substantial. I mean, it's
Around
based on
70,000.
And if I remember correctly from years previous, we receive a pretty good insurance rating with our employees because they don't have a high usage rate, is that right? No?
Well,
We have a high usage rate.
the way
High
that they
usage rate?
the way that they've done it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, because I think it might be important for us to understand how you've set the insurance up. It's not your conventional insurance plan.
With we have a high deductible plan.
Correct. With
And we have an HSA option with the high deductible plan. So we promote people to use their HSA, and with that HSA, it allows them to take better ownership of their medical expenses. So we try to incentivize that, but we have a fairly good usage of our health insurance. We'd like to be a younger workforce and much healthier.
Thank you, that answers it. I just wondered what context was there.
Okay. Yeah, definitely a preference to high deductible plans. Might have any better options. I guess losing some of the others.
Start dancing and singing, you're gonna lose the rest of the time.
I'm surprised it kept them 1.5.
Made it through a couple of trainings there. So. Okay. some of the other things, we expect property auto to come up by about 10%. We were looking at some of the COLA increased costs. The Western CPI is sitting around 3.1%. So we feel like a cost of living adjustment of 2% is in the correct range. And we're proposing that for both appointed and employees, if that's still the way council would wish to go. As far as the general fund is concerned, most revenue is expected to incline by 2.5%, except sales tax, we estimate at 5%, based on conservative potential increase. If it increases by 10%, 7%, a little bit more than that, I think to me, it puts us in a safer zone as far as budgeting expenses. If it does come up a little farther than we expected, great, we're even safer. All other taxes are expected to follow a similar trend as sales tax at a conservative 5%. Due to the airport project, we expect a cutback in revenue from fuel sales and fuel costs by about 20% due to a rehabilitation time during that particular time frame of construction. On the expense side, we in this proposal we've moved the UBIC payment $7,600 July 4th for $4,600 and fireworks for $26,000 from the council down to recreation, because we feel like that's a better fit for proper expense, and so you'll see that as an offset down below there. We've also added in this preliminary a $50,000 council budget for business incentive and a $10,000 for discretionary.
Now, tell me about that.
Business incentive, I know
We
Ryan
previously talked about business incentives, and the appetite for the council to have some ability to be able to have an incentive to
Right.
offer.
So
That would be one of these options, to say, hey, if you have something, we want to have a line item, instead of trying to say, okay, now you've agreed to pay something, now where do we find the budget for it? We've kind of set aside it.
well, and that brings up a point. We need to, that may be something we need to put on the agenda and set some parameters on how that money is reached by businesses, or how they can qualify for some of those monies.
At this
Because we
point,
have
we
talked
wanted
about
to
that.
earmark it into the budget. At this point, it obviously can't be spent out of this budget until July 1st, so we have some time that we could.
You don't want to amend the budget next year?
Well, we will,
It's a fun process.
That's good.
Okay. Any more questions on that? Ms. Ward?
and discretionary would be something like, the trees come up, and we say, well, how do we find them? We found here.
What did that end up costing overall?
I
You
think
don't
it
have to,
cost-
we can talk about
I
that.
think it was $5.50 a tree, that's
Okay.
what we ended up at. But something like that, saying, hey, council comes, something comes, you say, hey, we really want to support this. We've tried to take out things that were previously coded as discretionary, the UBIC, the July 4th fireworks. Those were previously coded as discretionary to the council, but we've been doing it for so long, I don't think they're truly discretionary. I think you've had a precedence on those, we've pulled those to recreation. But that 10,000 gives you an option to say, hey, if a little project here or there comes along and that's what you want, we've already set aside a budget to help to manage that. And if things change, we can adjust things as we go. We wanted to reserve something.
Which is truly more discretionary, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
I think it's great to have that discretionary. Myself, I would even just pull the business incentives off and just have it discretionary. That's where the money would come from for what the council utilized.
And within council allocation, it's not critical on which line item. It's critical that the end dollar number doesn't go over budget.
Yeah.
But within a line item, if you want it spent one way or another, within that council group, it's not an issue with one line item or another.
Perfect.
So,
I like where it said it.
Another expense that we've tried to anticipate is an added $30,000 for parks budget for 2 more baseball field dirt rehabs. It seems like that's on a good track there. We've had some good success on baseball field replacements thus far. General fund debt service, that's
They're like
basically-
our roads.
Very good.
If we keep them up, we won't have to spend so much rehabilitating.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's great that we're doing that. That'll make a big difference.
Right. As far as the general fund debt service fund, I'm just gonna say the word fund in one sentence, sorry about that. Debt service, the two debt service we have in that fund is the 2010 street bond and the aquatic center. I just added some information there so you knew that we pay about $110,000 a year for the 2010 bond and the aquatic center about $93,000. And then I also indicated in the report here how much is remaining on those debts. General fund capital projects, some of the ones that we're anticipating here. And all this is after getting with a lot of the department heads, trying to figure out exactly some of their needs, and also taking into account previous 5-year budgets and trying to put it all together. So I'll just go through those. Master plan, $200,000. IT improvements, we're steadily trying to bring all our IT world up to the current century. We're making a lot of progress, so I feel like that's going to help in that direction. Also, 3 access control systems on city building, $9,000. Ryan probably knows more about that one, but
It is really about security for the building. We've got so many keys out, and not knowing who comes and goes in the building, it's unfortunate, but the locks have never been changed to this building in a long time.
I made a few copies and handed them out, is that all right?
What's that? What's that?
I said I made a few copies and handed them out.
Yeah. So
Just
at
to
this
friends,
point-
just to close friends and family.
So at this point, this would take it into a fob system similar to what some of the LDS church have and what our police and fire have. It would match the rest of the building to that. And our aquatic center has that as well. So it's kind of bringing us all in the same system. So
right.
that's what that was.
Also a vehicle replacement, $30,000. Police vehicle replacement, $60,000. Some things for the fire department, SCBA packs and bottles, $48,000. Fire extrication power unit, $7,000. Animal shelter cages, $12,000. Animal shelter AC unit, $10,000. Streets roto milling machine, $10,000. Streets sidewalk project, $60,000. Streets utility improvement project, $500,000. That's the general fund related costs of that project. I know there's other types of costs associated with it. That's that portion. Alley improvements, $100,000. Airport runway, $3.354 mil. Cottonwood Creek Path project, proposition, $110,000. Park shed, $25,000. Any questions up to that point?
Well, I guess I have a question. And maybe I've already asked this before and don't remember, but what kind of money do we have set aside, or how do we earmark the funds for road maintenance around town, just on, newly constructed roads that have cracks and things like that?
So we have started, what I did, I think it's 350,000 for it.
You're talking the sinking fund?
No, I'm talking the streets budget, the actual street, not the
Oh.
capital projects for
Okay,
the streets,
streets.
the maintenance side of it. So and that's what we've done with a lot of the chip seal work. We've put about 350,000 a year. We've had 3 years worth that made up the 900,000. So we saved up 1 year and it rolled in, and then those 2 years rolled forward. So that's why we had a $900,000 project, because it's 3 years worth of funds that we kind of saved into that so we could have one large project. But we generally save about $300,000 towards that. But this project last year was the first one we really did a lot of that on. So we had to save up until we had enough to attract it and make it a bigger project.
And we've also instigated a sinking fund in the last year, putting money aside for the 5-year capital project list to make sure that we're planning ahead more so than we have before. So.
One of the things that I'd like to see and that was talked about at the DOT meeting was the software that there is available that we can enter our roads in and the lifespan, and keeping them within a, 12, 10 to 12 year period, which is doable with maintenance and things like that. And if we could implement that in our city, that would also help us with the budget, knowing what's coming up,
Right.
how much to plan for, everything else.
That's kind of where we've gotten the 300,000 number from, is that's what we figure a chip seal over each of them over a 5-year period, so that we could touch each road every 5 years
Right.
with a chip seal, and that would be the maintenance side. But the reconstruct side would be out of this capital project side, anything
Sure.
that's more than service. I have contacted him, we're working on, getting an update. It's been several years since we've had our last one.
Yeah.
And, we have talked to 2 of our engineering firms to work on getting that software so that it works for us.
Yeah, and when we get that, and then just trying to figure whatever we have to do to make sure that is, I know we did it several years ago, right before I got on the council, I think it was a year or 2 before I got on the council.
We used that program in USU, and
Yeah,
they came out and analyzed and set up the program.
they're kind of,
Just probably the same.
so whatever we gotta do.
Refresh it and get it so it's up to date, so that we can have up-to-date information, so we can give it like that.
Yeah, I think that'd help us with our budget and help me with the phone calls that I get and people, when are you gonna fix my road? And then I'd be like, well, let me look at the schedule.
It's part of a maintenance plan.
Exactly.
And what our thought is to have it in phases rather than in years. So we say, hey, if things are going well and we can do 2 phases this year, let's do 2 sections and then go to the next one. So that's what we're working on to get that plan together.
Good.
So,
Yeah, Vernon City has a very good plan on street maintenance. And every 5 years a chip seal, every 15 overlay, and they've been at it for 15 or 20 years, so they've got it down. It'd be worth visiting with.
And it shows too, if you're looking at Vernal, the streets look very, very nice. They're very well kept.
Any other questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Now, Parks lawnmower, 15,000, cemetery lawnmower, 15,000. Then moving on to the water fund, revenues are expected about 2.5%, driven by the increase in usage. It's kind of looking like this year is a little drier, so I'm sure we're going to have a little bit more water usage. Expenses are expected to increase by about 1.5%. Additional about 50,000 in depreciation anticipated for applicable project closing costs. As I've mentioned in the last presentation about the raising of the Victory water budget to the max capacity of the 430,000. Water fund capital projects, automatic utility reading equipment, 300,000. Am I losing more?
You gained one.
Gained one. All right.
She's getting paid for it, though. Don't want to hurt, get you too confident.
They're paying people to come listen to it. So automatic utility reading equipment, 300,000. That's part of the endeavor to replace some of the meters so they can communicate with the tower.
Now, just a quick question on that one. Obviously, will there be a change in personnel where we have equipment that'll read all those meters? Do we anticipate?
we don't anticipate, at this point, we only have 2.5 person department, so it's not a large department. But what it will do is it will better service our customers. It will allow us to read it on a daily basis from the tower. We'll then be able to identify leaks quicker and address those. We'll identify water leakage and spend more time there. We'll be able to spend more time on sanded meters. When they go out, we'll be able to change them more timely rather than waiting a month to find out that it's sanded and then have a month. We'll
Lost
also be
revenue
able to,
if the meter's not working.
yeah, meter's not working. So if the meter's not working, we'll be able to have that. We have other needs. If there is, we have that half-time person that we could move more into recreation as he's drugged that way. So at this point, we only have a 2.5 department to manage that. And they manage all the water that comes in from different wells, I think we just will be able to get more done rather than less people. So,
Backhoe replacement, 30,000. Very good well put back into service. I believe, I know that was on last year's budget, so, and I think that's been done, so.
actually, only portions of it has been done. We
Portions, okay.
have put the well back in, but we still need to do the motor and a line repair. So this is still, we still keep this in there because we still have some fixing of the line, making sure we bring that in. We believe all of our resources should be up to par if we can utilize them, so we have that. And having a small well at this point, we oftentimes have to get on one of our big wells, pump, and then it turns off, pump, and then it turns off. And a smaller well like this could continually pump, and that would be less demand of electricity, less wear and tear. That on and off is a bit harder. So this would keep a smaller one running and keep it.
This is the one on the White Rocks, the ranch,
Yeah, on
the Durgan.
Correct.
Talking to Central Utah, when they get billed quite a bit of money every time they have to start one of those electric
Right.
motors, so.
So if we can start one and keep one running, we'd be more efficient, and that's what we're adding this well back on.
Makes
the line.
sense.
So,
Also replacement public works vehicle, 3,750, water master plans, 100,000. As far as the sewer fund is concerned, similar idea, other than the increase of revenue is expected about 70,000 from the South Cove sewer area with some of those new connections, some of the connection fees that are coming in that way. On the expense side, most expenses are expected at 1.5%. Additional 100,000 in depreciation is anticipated for the closure of the South Cove sewer project. So quite a bit in a given year. That's what we're adding into that sewer fund. Sewer fund capital projects, 8 South. That's from 500 East to State Street. CIP project anticipating 100,000, and sewer master plans 100,000. Really sanitation fund, no changes because it reflects the agreement with K&K. Some of the grant funding that we're hoping to receive this coming fiscal year are listed here. 500,000 from CIB, 200,000 for master plans, 164 from airport state grant, 2.937 million from FAA airport grant, 150,000 for CIB for the automatic utility reading equipment. Same thing we were talking about with the replacement meters to be able to read off the tower. 100,000 from CIB for the sewer project. Any questions up to that point?
So that means our portion would look like about 300,000 to the airport project then, our contribution.
that's correct.
Okay. Other than that, those summary pages are reflected in the next 3 pages. At the end of page 8, I've also added in the mayor and council rate of pay to be built in as part of the preliminary budget. I know that has been expressed as a desire there.
Yeah. That's something that legally we have to do. Our wages are set by ordinance, and we look back years and have never found where those were ever set. So we're going to include those in the budget. Plus, I think we also need to include the statutory officials also, which would be appointed positions. So we may need to include those by the budget. So.
How did the Duchesne City hearing go?
It
was in the paper.
It went. I talked to him.
Did you?
Yeah. I don't know how the hearing went, but it got approved.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Are you talking about what are we talking about?
Oh, are you talking about the increase?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it got approved.
It didn't go very well for them.
Should we try that?
I just thought, wow. But I heard a lot, it wasn't him really initiating it, that some others had done it, but has ours gone down for the mayor? Is it
It's,
1,050 gross?
when I came on, that was the topic of, that was a topic that had come up. And I had mentioned that that's something that should be set because it had,
That is 1,050.
That
Yeah,
is?
it
Okay,
is.
that's what I was asking, because that,
but, and so it stayed the same. But there was some fluctuation. That's why the question came up. That's why we wanted it completely out there for the public.
Make sure it's on the budget each year.
Yeah. So there's no changes.
well, it is awfully minimal for our mayor, because, as I think JR would say, the meetings that are required or asked for the mayor to be to are pretty phenomenal for the hours that it takes away from his own.
I only average 1 or 2 a day.
I was gonna say, but anyway, I tried to get that raised back in the day.
I'm okay with it. It's a learning
Okay.
experience. I look at it as a public service, so
That's
I'm
great.
okay. I just want to make sure that it's public knowledge and make sure that they know and that's what's expected, so.
Perfect. Now on page 9, this is the revised capital projects and sewer projects. I mentioned that we'd eventually get to that. It's really, as Ryan mentioned, matching to expenses. I know the State Street project has to do with the UDOT grant, and that's matching to expected costs in the 2018 fiscal year. The water tower, up to 65, and so on. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that page. You see the Saco sewer project as well, going up to 4.6 mil, which that's the revenues we received from the CIB and DEQ. On the next page, page 10, is the preliminary 2019 water and sewer capital projects. Some of the ones we expected. And I think we went through that in the budget and brief anyway, so if you have any more questions on that. Yeah. The next page, page 11, this just gives I like pictures. I hope you do too.
Especially when they're colored.
Yeah,
This is not a picture.
especially when
This
they're
is a
in color.
graph. It's a pie chart.
Picture of a graph.
It is.
That's a picture.
It is a true pie chart.
I'm just joking.
That's the revenue breakdown based on the revenue preliminary on the general fund for this coming year. And the expense breakdown on the next page. Up to that point, appreciate your attention and appreciate your patience looking through that.
So do we have any questions before we entertain a motion to get this on for a public
Do
hearing?
we have any knowledge of the reevaluation of the county in property tax? And has there been centrally done? I heard something that they've been lowered. How is that going to affect our property tax anticipation?
So central assess is only a piece of the property tax. Central assess and residential will balance to the same number with the same certified rate. And
So we're not anticipating any
major increase.
or
Well,
decrease in them?
Well, we don't increase the tax collection other than growth. So if a new house comes in and there's more houses, then that valuation as growth comes into the effect and is calculated using the certified tax rate. But if you look at it, residential and centrally assessed are on a balancing scale. And if one goes down, the other one collects it. If central assessed goes down, residential will rise to balance to that loss.
Okay.
And so there isn't a net loss to those two. There can be a perception from residents that the tax went up, but if theirs goes up and the central assessed goes down, that is a balance, and that is part of the calculation that brings the same value in.
So the centrally assessed, like the oil being less valuable, then the home properties would go up, and that's where.
The rate on home property has to go up to balance for that.
Well, the question, that was my question, have they lowered much on the oil valuation or?
Central assessed did go down last year in valuation. We don't expect it to go down again this year, that would
Okay.
be the expectation. But there
That's
would
good.
have been a slight increase to residential to make up for the difference. But the opposite takes true when things are growing and those valuations for the oil field are growing, residential rate drops because he doesn't need to collect any more from it, and that balance
Right.
works out. But from our revenue stream, when it comes into the city, that has already been taking effect
Okay.
at the state county level. We don't see that difference they allocate.
I do understand that. I was just wondering if we'd heard anything on the oil, basically the
I
oil.
haven't seen the assessment, but Central Assess, they're not due until middle of May.
Okay,
So at that point, we wouldn't see that assessment yet.
thank you.
Ryan, we're on a roll right there with taxes. I think it might be helpful too, just to help the whole council understand how, in the past, sometimes the council hasn't realized the taxes they were able to get and how that works.
Which tax would you like to go into? I'd love to talk taxes, but we were hoping for a short meeting, but I would love to talk taxes.
Just more in how.
I think what he's talking about is the opportunity, or
Oh.
the,
The growth portion of it?
Right, the growth
where we
portion
were
of it.
losing revenue in property taxes
Yeah,
because
so-
of,
So if I can, I
quickly,
wish I could draw
you
this.
have,
And then I still have my manager's report, so what happens?
Do it briefly.
do you want to do it in your manager report?
I can. What
Okay,
basically happens, we
briefly.
talk about more buildings, more growth, more things that come into our town. Is we get a business, we have growth. And that growth, we can still tax that and so we'll have more revenue
At the
next year.
standardized rate, or the
At the certified tax rate.
certified tax rate?
We will have more revenue next year than we did this year if we have more businesses. So if we have more businesses, more homes, our property tax collection will actually rise, we'll get more property tax, but it's not more from individual homeowner, it's not one spot, it's because there's a new home. There is new growth, that growth is calculated in, and we could go through that, but it would take a significant chunk of time to go through the actual calculation.
Thank you, that's sufficient. I just want everybody to understand how that works, because that's often a question that comes from the public is, well, gosh, you're raising our taxes, revenue's up. That's not the case, it's just understanding how it works. That's all. Thank you.
Any other comments or
you.
questions before we have a motion to put it on for a public hearing?
And this went along with the public hearing, we'd like to know if you approve of the budget assumptions that we first talked, 'cause that's where the budget
I
based
think
on.
on the,
So, then if you wanna change it, we wanna go through and change, so we can have.
I got a little question, if you don't mind. I've heard, so this is the tentative budget or the preliminary budget, or what's the difference between the preliminary and the tentative budget? Just for my understanding.
Preliminary and tentative or it would be the same.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It'll be preliminary, tentative, or final. We haven't done this, but we could take and do the final into July if we had to, and have a tentative that would bridge that. So we could consider the bridge between June and when we pass it in July, we could have that as a tentative. But we generally try to have our budget approved prior to the start of the year. That's what we like to do. That's ideal.
as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know how the council feels, but we have our meeting on the 30th, and I would just say we could approve it, but if anything were to come up on the 30th that we need to bring before the council, we could do that in the next meeting.
And we reviewed these with that committee last time.
Yeah.
So
And I agree, I mean, it's really just approving the basis, making sure that you're okay with the assumptions and the basis of the budget in between now and the public hearing. I mean, if there's something that you feel like.
And we can bring that up in the next meeting if there's something that we feel like we need to tweak.
Mayor, I'd make that motion that you were asking
Okay.
about.
Motion to go to public hearing, or put this on public hearing. Do I have
I'll
a
second it.
second by Councilman White? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Well done.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Aren't you glad you only have to do that twice a year?
I am.
Did everyone have an opportunity to look at the purchase order?
Yeah.
Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilman White,
I'll second it.
second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Reports, we'll start with you.
I was wondering how
Councilman
Brady
Lehman.
got his wife to come to city council tonight. It's a great addition. How'd you do that, Brady?
Oh, this is date night? Okay. Boy, there's a lot more fun things.
Yeah.
To do on date night.
We did have a parks meeting yesterday morning, Parks and Recreation. It was very informative there. I was very impressed with all the department heads, and they were reviewing budgets and final things as we're coming to the year and handing out and all the things, reporting on what's going on. And softball and baseball for the young people were all up in enrollment. Softball substantially for the girls, and swimming, the pool, everything. It's been quieter at the golf course with the hurricanes every day. So, but we hope.
Well,
that
at least they got it open early this year.
they did, and that everyone was optimistic and doing good, and I like the accountability. It's a lot more than it was a few years back on it. It's great.
Those hurricane winds really help our slice anyway.
Or what?
Straightens out your slice then.
Yeah,
Depends on if you're going south or north.
yeah, you can anticipate that way. But anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman White.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Councilman Baird.
Nothing to report right now.
Okay. All I have to report is we have another Johnson Water meeting this Thursday. It will be at 8:30. That we'll attend, and we'll see what transpires there. So we have made some headway, and looking forward to that. And hopefully, we can make some more headway there. So
Mayor, after you guys get done with that meeting Thursday,
yeah,
in our next council meeting, we can go into an appropriate meeting to talk about those negotiations, so we're up to date on where we are.
we could. We'll have to talk about. Yeah, we'll talk about that. The only reason is they've asked us, and we've agreed not to divulge anything until we get a little further along in the negotiations. I know that sounds strange, but
But that's what they ask,
That's
and
what
they're
they-
not supposed to be doing it with theirs.
yeah. And
But-
so,
Well, I don't
but
think
Can't get very-
city council should be.
no, you wouldn't be. And so when we get to the point of where we felt comfortable presenting something to the council, that would definitely happen before we did any type of agreement or anything. It's odd. It's odd for me. It's one of those things that
I think we might bring that up tomorrow night, or
Yeah.
Thursday night, because it is
it's
something we agreed to.
verbally, but it's something
To
we will
agree to
probably have
other
know,
things.
because it is strange. It doesn't make any sense. So
I think we just, I think the committee working ahead is great, you just don't wanna get too far ahead of the council. And
yeah,
I think there's danger.
I think for those of us involved, we've talked about what proposal we made,
yeah,
and so that's what we're trying to do. They're trying to find holes in that or change it a little bit, and so we can't do anything different than what we've agreed to anyway. So we're just trying to get their feel and what how they will accept what we proposed, and we don't know where that's going to go yet. So.
basically, what we can say is what we have talked to them about has been exactly what we've talked about in council. Nothing's changed. Yeah. So, but we'll see how it goes, and I think it'd be appropriate just to tell them, we're going to.
Our council isn't comfortable with
Yeah.
not being able to be included in this.
Right. And if anything were different, it might be, yeah, nothing's different than what we've already talked about, but, so, that's all I have.
I don't have anything relative to committee, and I think, we'll have to look at the projects we'd like to appreciate the work that's going on State Street. It looks like it's coming along slowly with the weather, but it's coming along. It's gonna make a huge improvement.
I have a question on that. Was there any additional red tape for the contractors on that? I just heard one make a comment saying, we're gonna have to charge more for this because there's too much extra stuff we're being required to do. And I didn't get any details.
I'd be curious of that detail because the project was originally federal money. And so it would have required us to do Davis-Bacon, the certified wages, do all of that work. And in order to speed along the project, that would have made the project funding available October 1st. So we went out, because they were building Highway 40, we were able to get state funding and swap. So instead of having federal funding, we were able to use state funds, which don't have the Davis-Bacon in it. So actually, there's less requirements.
There's way less. Okay.
Significantly less requirements than what would have been. And so at that point, I would be interested to follow that through because that's a perception problem rather than a reality problem.
Well, their comment was in other areas they do work, they automatically add 10% because there's, I don't know, personalities that they deal with or something that just, and I didn't know if there were some.
There has been that theory with prior engineering firms.
Yeah.
But this one hasn't had that. But you know, they are late. They are late on their proposals, so there is the chance of liquidated damages, and that is being discussed.
Okay.
That this project, because we moved the funding from October 1st to July 1st, so that they could start earlier, so we had the funding. So there is discussions of what liquidated damages may be, and because we are under the state's rules, we would have to follow the state's guideline on liquidated damages, and we'd have to show actual dollar damage. That is rather than just time. So there is some requirements because it is state money. It's a little bit more restrictive than city money, but it's a lot less.
Lot less federal. Okay.
As I'm sure Bill could attest, there's a lot less restrictive.
Well, I'm sure that we deal with it.
Detail, I follow up, make sure that they understand.
Well, I'm sure that we go through this all the time with contractors and stuff, so I didn't know if it was anything big or not, but.
In fact, it should be a lot less.
Okay.
We're happy that we could do it because it didn't require it. When we get to CDBG money next year on 8 South, it requires it all. So
Okay.
it'll be a lot more requirements for the little money that's there.
Only other thing, maybe we'll pick it up in your manager report. I just wanted to have some conversation about the conversation we'd had as a council a month ago about bringing back some information on some incentive zones in the city, and maybe you're ready to speak about that, maybe not.
I'm not. I'm still in research on
Okay.
that one, so I apologize. I'm still
Perfect.
working on that. I haven't forgotten it.
Okay, perfect.
My
Thank
notes
you.
are on my desk to work on it. I have reached out to other spots and just haven't found the right spot to bring those. I haven't found a few things that are towards the demolition and some of those kind of things that have found some ordinances that way, but I'm not prepared to necessarily report on that. But I haven't forgotten it.
We should work together on that too, because that'll, part of the Economic Development Committee, as we
Sure.
push that forward, we'll incorporate some of that, and so.
As we work together on that committee, I think that would be a
Yeah.
good one that, we can help on that.
Yeah.
So, I agree.
Because there's been some things, some ideas and things that I found we need
Yeah, working together would be great.
to get together on that, so. Councilman Burdick.
Not really a lot. You can kind of see what's going on with State Street and the old sewer project is running right along. The UDOT meeting that you mentioned earlier, what they're in Montoya, brought up some interesting projects around the area, which is kind of exciting. A lot of some lanes and fixing some intersections. There's only quite a bit of work and a little bit of work between here and Vernon, just around. Sounds like they're gonna be doing quite a bit of work around here, so that's an improvement for all the residents of the basin.
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, that was a good meeting, exciting meeting to be to.
It's a good
Not
attendance.
quite as exciting as your budget. So,
In fact, it was less exciting than anyone I'd been to.
Brian.
Me? Okay, couple of things, just to let you know, we met, we had our review of engineering qualifications. We received 4. We'll talk more about that as we go forward, but we received 4, we did meet, and those are Joe and I and Howard and JR wasn't able to make it, but we did go through those 4, and we will come with a recommendation for the next council meeting, and it's on that agenda. So one thing to note, because of the time frame in which we're trying to get our project completed, we will actually also have on that agenda the engineering contract to move forward, so we can move right into that from that side. If the council decides to go something, they could at that point, but we'll bring back a recommendation and bring the contract with it. So anyway, that'll be for next meeting, just to kind of give you a teaser there. One thing that the engineers have done for us on Stonegate here is kind of showing where we're at. They update this weekly, and it's kind of an interesting one. At this point, the sewer lines, all of the mainline sewer lines are in. You can see that the laterals to each residential house, those are into the right-of-way, and so that then they can start tying on. We expect them to start tying on within the next week or so.
A couple of questions on that. In the original cost, was that included in the contractor tying into their sewer, or I'm hearing something about a deferral if they tie in, they're getting some back?
Right, so originally it was, the contract is with Condi to put it in. And Condi has gone out and said if the residents want to bring it out and reduce the length and do some of that work either through a contractor or themselves, that they could accomplish that. There was a lot of interest by some of the residents out there to be able to do that themselves. Instead of having to go all the way around the house, they could go underneath the basement, change that flow out, and come to the street. So there is an ability for them to save and be paid what we would pay Condi to go all the way back, and they would take the difference really. But that's between them and Condi. Really, the city is paying for the connection of each of them, and that is part of the project. And then the loan is obviously covered by all of them. So
That helps.
that makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
The blue is the storm drain. They have already started. If you have been out there, they've already started prepping for the curb and gutter, and so they'll have curb and gutter. They prep for it. That should start within the next week or so, a couple of days really.
They'll start tomorrow.
Tomorrow, so appreciate that. I would say a little bit longer because I like to under-promise and over-deliver. So, just so you know, but that's great. But yeah, we've been making significant progress with the project. I think it's going along. I think we're about halfway spent on the project, and got a significant amount.
What's the projected closing date on that?
Our goal is July 1st. That's been the goal from the start of the project, has been July 1st. I believe we're close to that. The contractor actually had a little bit less time, but from a city, we've always kind of taken that July 1st. When the contract came, it was June
28th, or
but now they've gotten little
the
things.
current
going.
contract dates
Yeah.
until June 28th.
So anyway, we're still shooting for July 1st. We don't want to promise that one and under-deliver. So
That's including asphalt repairs too.
it'll be full asphalt will all be redone. And it'll be cement treatment is what we'll use to go underneath the road to strengthen that with the soil that's out there. We felt that was best. So anyway, we're making great progress, and we're excited for this project. Curb is in on State Street. The asphalt should go in at least part of it next week on the east side. It's what we're kind of hoping for. And then they have a few pieces of concrete they have to redo, and then they'll put in the asphalt on that side and then sidewalk. So we're making progress in all of our projects. We're currently on time and on budget, so we're hopefully you want to take that with you.
Sure.
So
Thanks for letting us borrow that.
You bet.
anyway, like little demonstrations. As we work as a city trying to find ways that we can improve, and our goal and one of the goals I have with each of the departments, and they'll hear me say it often, is progress, not perfection. That's what I'm expecting, progress, not perfection. And so in that light, I've met with the Public Works and our lovely Brenda with our public information, and we've come up with an idea that I think would be fun, and hopefully everybody else does. So what we have, I'm going to pass this along, this little folder, and I'll describe what this is. So we are trying as a city to make improvements, and we have done tremendous amounts of chip seal work over the years.
Thank you.
And with this last year having increased Stonegate, State Street, sidewalks along Lagoon Street, we've chip sealed almost a third of our roads. We have been out into a lot of different areas. And so we thought it would be fun to involve the public in maybe another project. And so what this is Improve My City competition. So we're asking people in the community to take a picture of what they think the worst spot is, or the most difficult spot. Maybe it's the road that's fallen apart. Maybe it's the waterway that has turned to gravel. Maybe it's something like that. Take a picture, and then have your friends and family vote on it. So we'll give points for the likes for that particular one. They'll like that as the project that ought to get done. So it's kind of a competition for doing a project. And what we're going to do is we're going to commit that will be our top project for the year. We'll get it done. It can only be a block long, so it can't be a multi-million-dollar project because we don't have funds for that.
I was going to say you might want to specify.
Yeah, it can't be so long. It can only be up to a block long.
And capital projects, because
capital projects.
Otherwise we'll have a field house or something like
No.
that.
It has to be capital. This is something the Public Works can do. This isn't building a new event center or recreation addition onto our aquatic
Not all
center.
the public understands
So-
what public works
Yeah,
are.
Public Works is an infrastructure. We're talking infrastructure. This is the base when you drive on, what you walk on, sidewalks. Maybe this is the spot that says the worst spot is a place that needs a new sidewalk or something. So anyway, this is kind of our we have a little competition. Would like to see how it works. We're a little nervous that people will tell us all the things we do wrong, but that in mind, we're happy for.
They're going to anyway.
They are going anyway, and we might as well make fun and do something. So we're excited about being able to ask them, and as they get it. Hey, at some point, somebody's project is going to get there. The other piece of it, we're going to give a little incentive for the one that finds the project and is willing to go out and take a picture and put it on and maybe get some votes. So what we've talked about is maybe giving a 2 18-hole pass golf, or they can choose that, or a reservation for the party room at the aquatic center, or they could get a full day reservation for one of our pavilions, or we could give a $50 credit on their water bill. So kind of give them if they get the top one. So that's our hope is we'll see how it works.
It might be more revealing than we would like, but if we don't know, we can't work on it. And we'd like to see what the public's number one is.
It's a great idea.
So,
It's,
anyway,
it'll,
This is,
it's fun. That's,
yeah, and it's something, you know, I get people calling occasionally that they have needs and things like that. And this will give me an avenue to direct them and say, you know what, hey, have you seen this on our Facebook page? Why don't you put it there and
Take some
we're
pictures.
gonna open it up tomorrow. We've got prepped, we're ready to open it up tomorrow, and we're gonna go through the 28th, right?
Next Friday, 27th,
27th. We're gonna go
Just
through
one
the
week?
27th.
about a week and a half.
So, at that point, we'll have it open for about a week and a half. What we also have is we have on our website, so talking to your point, Mayor, is we have on our website a spot that people can submit to. And they can submit it, and it comes in both to the Public Works Director and myself, and it can come through. And if we don't have the right category, we'll create it. But we'll also like to try to say, okay, well, if you're too late for this, remember, you can always submit a concern or an issue to the city through our website, and maybe highlight that so that they can do that even when the competition's over. Well, you know, if it goes really well, it might be an annual thing.
how's it being advertised then? If it's
So we're
only
gonna-
10 days?
We're gonna promote it on Facebook because we want them to post the pictures on Facebook. And we have a hashtag that we're gonna have them use, and then just asking them to take that flyer, just, you know, download the flyer, the picture, and
Go.
and share it on their pages and encourage their friends and family to vote for it and share it
And they get points for sharing,
yeah.
and they get
So I
points for
think,
likes, right?
so
We
for
have-
every like, they'll get 1 point, and for every person that shares their post, and it keeps track of it on there, we'll give them 2 points. So each person could potentially give them 3 points.
So this will be a youthful event.
And
You're welcome to be on. You're welcome to
we're
be on.
hoping that it will also.
get your grandkids to show you how to use Facebook.
We're hoping it will also bring more people to the city's page as they're sharing it out. We're almost to 1,500 people,
great.
so it's my goal to get that by the end of the month. So
That's
I'm
great.
hoping
It
to
does.
do that.
She has given her notice, and will be leaving. And we'll be sad to see her go. We've enjoyed it.
It's done a great job, and it's been a great position to have in the city to do.
We're looking
Open
for
those
the
things.
next person to fill that same spot and role. So we're trying to entertain what that might look like. So anyway, any other questions? That was, I was almost saying.
Darn it. Progress is perfection, I guess. Thank you, Ryan, for that. Just really quickly, the pending discussion items, the chapter by chapter, we do have a couple of public hearings coming up. That'll be next meeting concerning some of the ordinance changes that we have. Can you make sure that we have those in the packet so that we can make sure that we understand what those changes would be? I think we've already discussed them to a degree, but I want to make sure that we're well informed on that. I know of no reason to go into closed session. Anybody else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Motion by David. Hey, that's
Yeah.
got one and got one. And
Second.
Motion by David Bear, second by Councilman Latham. All in favor?
Aye.